Welcome to the Wealthy Life Podcast. I'm Sybil Verch, and today we're going to be talking about the one thing that has the biggest impact on your financial health, and that's your cash flow. Most people worry about investment returns or focus on savings or debt repayment, but those strategies don't work effectively if you haven't taken control of your cash flow. Joining us today is Stephanie Holmes-Winton, a leading voice in cash flow planning, money mindset, and financial behavior. We're going to be learning how to master your cash flow. Stephanie, welcome to the Wealthy Life.
Thanks for having me, Sybil. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you here because this is such a fun topic to cover. Why is mastering your cash flow so important?
I think because it's the thing that touches all the parts of your life, right? Everything we do in finance, everything we do day to day is almost always touched by cash flow. You know, the food you feed your kids in the morning, the clothes you put on to go to work, the way you get to work, your cash flow enables it all. So it's a super crucial part of finance, but it is often neglected. A lot more money is spent on marketing investments or insurance, and people tend to think about those things as the big part of their finances. But in reality, like you said in your intro there, the rest of it's enabled by cash flow. If you don't have your cash flow under control, you can't maximize the rest of the things you could be doing with your money.
No, and money does not grow on trees. I wish it did, but it doesn't. We earn what we earn and we spend what we spend. And making sure that those balance each other out on a regular and consistent basis is so important, but it's easier said than done. It costs a lot of money to live. And I think inflation, things are getting more expensive. So what works? Like we talk about, I think most people start with the concept of a budget. And I think you and I share a belief about budget. Tell me what you think.
I think it's the B word. I don't think I understand the concept, obviously, and I think it's the main kind of public domain idea around managing your spending. And it's very straightforward. You know, you just add up your income and deduct what you spend and then somehow control that. But the reality is, in today's world, we use electronic spending, we have credit. It is more complicated than budgeting has really been made for. You know, back in the day when you got paid cash to do your job, it's all you had. It was pretty easy to budget, especially lower income people. You had zero choice. But today it's just so much more complicated. So I'm not a big fan of budgeting, except for things that have a beginning and an end. So if there's something that is like a project you're doing or an event you're going to, like a wedding, or you're going on a trip, that's a great use of a budget because it's time bound. But as soon as we try to use budgeting for day to day, we get tired and frustrated. And I can tell you right now, if a financial professional like yourself, no matter how talented, and you are talented, if you put up a billboard that said, "Come in and see me for a budget," the line wouldn't be very long. Nobody wants to be put on a budget.
No, it's like restrictive. It's what you can't do is how I think most people look at it. It's like diet, what you can't eat, budget, what you can't spend. And that restrictive feeling is not very inspiring or motivating. Yet it is important and it does work for some people. But what's a better way to look at your money coming in and out and a better way to feel on top of it?
Yeah, managing your cash flow is definitely important, and it's important for everybody at all income levels. But a budget may not be suitable for many people, regular humans. There are those odd people who love a spreadsheet, but not necessarily love a budget. So a better way to look at it is to think about the way you spend. So there's expenses that are higher risk. There are things that you're more likely to overspend on. And then there's things that you're less likely to overspend on. So when you're thinking about your spending, those lower risk items are things that you can automate. Those are things like your bills, your mortgage payment, right? Nobody went to Vegas had a few too many martinis and accidentally paid too much of their mortgage, right? That's not what happens. And so those like low risk things, those are great for automation. Saving, monthly saving amounts, automation, great. But when it comes to your spending, one of the smartest things you can do is separate your day-to-day spending from the account that your bills are coming out of. Otherwise, you're trying to do mental math, and humans are very bad at that. It's not intelligence, it's the level of distraction, complexity, and all the things that are happening in our lives. So don't make things harder for yourself. When it comes to cash flow, you want to design your cash flow changes to be as easy as possible so it feels normal. You're not having a fight with yourself every day.
Okay, let's jump into that a little bit further. So you talked about two different accounts. So walk us through what that would look like for the average person.
Yeah, so the way I like to do it, I call it a committed account and a spendable account. So a committed account is those bills, those things that you know you have to pay. Those are things that you tend to know off the top of your head, and they're easy to verify the amount.
So like your rent, your mortgage, your hydro, your cell phone bill, maybe your monthly car insurance, whatever it is, all of those fixed expenses, well, maybe some are variable, but the expenses that you have every single month, the true bills, whatever that totals, that amount of money needs to be in one account and come out of one account every month.
Yeah.
Got it.
And the way I like to do it is I think your income should go in there.
Okay.
And then have a physically separate and both accounts, if possible, low fee or no fee would be better. And it is challenging to get a no fee or low fee account at brick and mortar institutions. So have a look at some of the online options. There's a lot of banks out there that don't have a footprint, so to speak, and have especially good options, especially for that spending account, because that is just a different level of account. It doesn't need to be too complicated. It needs to have a debit card, preferably no overdraft. And you just want to have whatever amount you're going to spend every week moving over to that separate account. And that just makes it much easier for you to pay attention to what you're trying to control and actually control it. Otherwise, everything's moving in and out of the same account, and it gets out of control really easily.
Well, it does. And I think a big part of that is when you look at the bills that come out every month, they all come out on different days of the month, and it's hard to keep track of it. So you're looking at your account balance and you're thinking, oh, good, I've got this much money to spend. But if you forgot that your hydro bill, your cell phone bill, or your rent is coming out the following week, you may overspend. So what you're saying is get all of your income, your paychecks go into one account, your main account. From there, all your bills come out. And then whatever you have left over, it sounds like you're saying divide it by 4 essentially, if there's 4 weeks in a month, and transfer that amount to a spending account. And then only spend what's there every week. Is that?
Not quite.
Okay.
You move everything that's left over. What you want to do is look at what's reasonable on your income to spend every week on the things you can control. And for most people, and I have quite a bit of data on this, I find at least 80% of people, this is the case. If you have an amount that's kind of reasonable for you to live off, so it might be $300 a week, it might be $800 a week, depending on your income. And that money should move over to that spendable account. But typically, that wouldn't be all that's left over. Typically, that's how you end up with a little bit of a buffer that you can start using to save, invest, pay down debt. Because one of the things with managing your cash flow, if you don't get an achievement from it, you will give up relatively quickly. And so you want to see yourself making progress. And one of the other things you want to do with money that you can free up by separating your spending is fund short-term goals, things you're excited about, trips. Don't make it all about your retirement plan. As practical as that can be, it can be very difficult to stick to.
Right, and you want to keep yourself motivated along the way. There's another third type of an account that I like to set up. And that account, I call it my annual expense account, because there's certain types of expenses that only come out once a year. It might be, in my case, it would be my house insurance, my property taxes. I pay my car insurance once a year. A lot of the insurance bills I do pay once a year. Most people don't know this. You can do it monthly, but if you do, there's often a premium charged. So house insurance will charge a 10% premium on your annual bill if you want them to pull it out monthly instead. So I don't do that. I have a separate account. First of every month or on my paychecks, boom, it just goes over there. You did touch on something really important, which is don't put it all in there to spend, because there's debt repayment, there's savings, there's other things that you need to also factor in. So let's talk about savings. How much should people save? How do they figure out what that number is? And that should come out first.
Yeah, so yes and no. It doesn't necessarily have to come out first. You shouldn't try to save from your spending account, because that is where you need permission to use that money for what it is that you need to do every week. But I definitely think it should be automated. Saving for anything, including your annual expenses account, automating that as much as humanly possible will take you out of your own way. We kind of want to put you in your way when you're making spending decisions, and we want you out of your way when you're making saving decisions. So I think that account you've got going is a great idea. It is important to check with your insurer if they actually do charge a premium on payments. Some of them don't. Our insurance company, for example, you don't pay anything extra if you pay them annually. You just lose the power that money could have had for you if you happen to have it all at once. There's no benefit, but there are many that it's somewhere between 8 and 12% that they're charging you for the privilege of paying monthly. So those are some good things for you to check out. And the good thing about those things is they're one-time efforts, right? You don't have to micromanage that. You can go call the insurance company and find out all at once. And then you can decide, well, next year we're going to save ahead and we're going to pay this annually, and we're going to save ourselves a few $100s. And the thing I think you should do with those few $100s you save is put at least some of it towards something fun. It's much easier for us to keep going if we experience some of the money we saved. Trying to willpower ourselves to only save for the long term is really difficult. Another type of savings you really need, and this is another reason you absolutely never spend all of what's left over, is emergency savings. That is crucial. And I think there's two things about emergency savings that people don't expect, or it throws them off. And the one thing is that it takes a really long time to build up a proper emergency savings account. I can remember in my early days working with clients, we would start emergency savings and they'd be saving $500 a month, and they'd be really disappointed that there wasn't $20,000 in there after a year, even though they know that's not how math works. But it just felt like they were taking such a long time. And I learned that, hey, you've got to realize that we have to expressly say how many months it might take you, or if you're building your own savings, look at how many months it might take you. And it's okay if it takes you 2 years or 3 years to build up your emergency savings. The most important thing is that you're doing it, because what you don't want to do is only focus on paying down debt or spend all the leftover, because then the only choice you'll have when you do have a financial emergency is to go into debt. And that makes us sad and angry and frustrated. And then we stop trying at all.
Yeah,
So
you quit.
well, yeah, emergency savings. And the other thing about emergency savings, I think that people don't expect or don't think of, is that emergencies do not end when we stop working. A lot of people, when they think about retirement, they don't think about the fact that they should keep planning to have some sort of liquid contingency money available. And some people can do that within their portfolio, but others may not have that option depending on how they've saved their money or how much money they have. They may not have that much wiggle room. So I like retirement income to include an amount that would continue to go towards savings, because the roof does not care that you're retired. Sure, you can't lose your job, but there's a lot of financial emergencies that have nothing to do with your paycheck.
Yeah, and on that note, financial emergencies, sometimes they aren't really emergencies. I mean, you talk about the roof. Well, we know that a roof only lasts, 25 years on average. So if you know that you've got 5 years left on your roof, life expectancy, what do you do?
Yeah, so we should certainly be saving for things like that. But and some roofs will do more than 25 years. And I think when it comes to the huge expense of just purchasing a home, let alone maintaining it, that people don't necessarily look at the lifespan of different pieces of equipment in their houses, like furnaces, roofs, windows. Those are the kinds of things that do not last the whole lifetime of the home. And so that is certainly something that can become part of your financial plan that you can be saving towards regularly. But, a hurricane can come when your roof is 7 years old. Take it from me. It happened to me. And it can rip a bunch of shingles off, which can cause you to need a roof band-aid and then a replacement of that little bit of roof. And that isn't on an old roof. So there is maintenance stuff that we can plan for, and then there's things we can't control. The other thing that's really important about saving for emergencies is that it's better for us to pay for emergencies from money we had to work hard to save than it is for us to use the credit card. Because let's say your fridge dies and you've saved $10,000. You will be much more careful about how much you pay that big box store or your local appliance retailer for a new refrigerator than if you just put it on the credit card, where it doesn't seem like it hurts so bad, like it wasn't so much effort, because it's in the future. And we're not so good at estimating future effort, but we're pretty good at remembering current and recent past effort. And so using savings to pay for emergencies instead of credit cards is also super important.
So how do people even think of all the things that are going to pop up in the future? That is a challenge that I would love to be able to solve for. We know there's regular maintenance, but there's no magic list out there. If you're a homeowner, you need to plan for all of these expenses. Wouldn't it be nice if there was? But maybe the emergency fund just covers that. Or is there another formula people can use as a guide?
I think it depends on the property. Some people's furnaces would be, $10,000 to replace, and someone else's might be $30,000 to replace. This is a good thing to do when you're planning a home purchase or, upgrading, moving into your next house, thinking about the age of everything and how long you should expect it to last. But those really are slightly longer term goals. While emergency savings can be used in a pinch, those are things that I think you should be actively tucking money away for. Or if you are going to borrow for it, which is not unreasonable depending on your scenario, considering the source of funds when borrowing for anything that's major maintenance or home improvement, being careful not to use credit cards or high interest debts for that.
Right. So money mindset. I think you touched on it briefly when you said it's harder to spend money that you've saved than it is to use credit. So what are some of the money mindsets that work against people, and how do they change that so that they can get their money mindset working for them?
Yeah, so I think it was my second book. I wrote about these money mindsets I had observed in my clients. It wasn't really that intentional. I just started noticing a pattern, and this person's really good at saving, but then they freak out about this, or this one's really well researched. They really understand something, but then they don't do this, and this makes so much sense. And I started to look at, why are we behaving the way we do with money? And so we developed these money mindsets, and they're on a control scale. So the brick wall is the most controlling, and the optimist is the least controlling. And in the middle there is the dreamer, who does not have their feet firmly planted on the ground. So all the money mindsets are just what they are. They're not good or bad. But when it comes to saving, the money mindsets are higher on the control scale. The people that are more controlled or controlling, more research oriented, more confident with their finances, might be more likely to save, to take action. Whereas people lower on the control scale might be more likely to procrastinate, or think, well, everything's going well. I don't really need a cushion. I make plenty of money, especially certain mindsets. So I think there's that, like on the control scale. But the other thing about our behavior in general is humans tend to be overconfident. And overconfidence helps us not be debilitated by fear, which is great. Because if we really sat around thinking about all the things that could go sideways on us, we would never leave our beds. We would lay there with the pillow over our head, and that'd be it. And in reality, there's a lot that can change, a lot that can happen to us. So we need that overconfidence for survival, but it gets in our way. So we get overconfident about how long our roof is going to last. We get overconfident about how long we can wait to start saving for retirement. We get overconfident about how little we'll spend once we're retired, or how little something will cost. Like a lot of people could estimate the cost of, say, a renovation, and they might lowball some of the things that they think they would put in, but then they also might miss all the little details. And so that's a pretty common human behavior that we see in all the mindsets to different degrees. And then another one I would say that really affects us is herding behavior. So herding as in sheep, following. And sometimes people don't like that. They think, hey, you're saying I can't think for myself. No, it's evolutionary. We have to shortcut some things because we literally do not have enough time to process all the options for something or do the math to the nth degree to figure out the exact right thing to do. So, for example, in Canada, most people have a 5-year fixed rate mortgage. And there's no statistical reason for that. There's no mathematical reason. There's no reason that everyone should be doing that, except that it's shown to us as the most popular option on the website or in the brochure or when we talk to the professional. And so therefore, we think everyone else is doing that. So we do it because that decision can feel overwhelming. And so we look for common practices to copy instead of really thinking about whether we need that. And let's say you're a new retiree, you happen to retire with a mortgage and a few other debts. Maybe it's smarter for you to have a 3-year term and pay everything off than stretch it over 5 years and pay extra interest. Maybe it's better for you to pay everything off in 7 years or 22 years or what have you. But a lot of people don't even think about that. So there's all these little things at play that interfere with our decision making or that we use to make our decision making feel easier. And all of those are interwoven with those money mindsets.
How do we know we're even doing it though? Where does the awareness come into play?
Well, watching this, listening to this is going to help you with some awareness, because I don't know that a lot of people necessarily are going to naturally go, wait, why am I doing this? Because most of the time you don't even realize you're doing it. Or in the example of the 5-year fixed rate mortgage, you feel like, well, of course I'm doing that. That's the smart thing to do because that's what everybody's recommended to do. So therefore, why would I do anything different? So I think exposing yourself to ideas around financial behavior, there's lots of articles out there. Listening to us today just gets you thinking about why you're doing what you're doing. There are billions of dollars invested in getting us to make purchase decisions, investment decisions, financial decisions every day, down to the tiniest little expenditure. And so we need to arm ourselves with the knowledge of what's driving our behavior to help us avoid kind of being led into spending money in a way that might benefit the product manufacturer, but maybe it's not so good for us.
Well, spending is a big problem. And we are easily influenced, and credit makes it way too easy to buy. And I think back to old budgeting programs where they would say, take your paycheck, you cash it, so you've got cash, and you would put the cash in different jars. And this jar would be for your rent, and this jar would be for, say, your groceries, and so on. You'd have your emergency piggy bank jar. It was easier to see and manage when it was in front of you. It's not so easy today. And then there's the sense of, immediate gratification. So something, I'm guilty of it sometimes too. I'll be scrolling on social media and all of a sudden this new purse pops up and I go, ooh, that's nice. I would maybe like to buy that. And sometimes I would just buy it, but I'm getting better even myself, which is I just put it in the shopping basket and I just leave it there. And then I'll go back a few days later. And 99% of the time, I don't end up buying what I thought I wanted to buy in the moment. It doesn't mean anything to me anymore. I'm in a different frame of mind. So we can't talk about mastering cash flow without talking about tips on how to manage the spending and be intentional about the spending. I prefer that term because telling people what they can and can't spend money on, it's not our place. That is each person's decision, and they own that right and that power. But if we can help influence their decision making so that they are being more intentional about how they're spending and it's aligning with their goals, they'll be in a happier, stronger financial position. So what tips do you have on that side?
Yeah, I like what you're saying there because a lot of times people feel like they're going to be given a lecture. And in reality, what I really want people to do is learn enough about their cash flow so they get the life they want from it. That might not look like what I want from my cash flow. And that's why you work. That you worked, you earned the money, you get to decide what to do with it. But reality is reality. So combining what you want with what's happening around you, what you can afford, super crucial. So a couple of tips I have. I love your tip about the shopping cart. So delay works well. So use procrastination to your advantage. Buy things like putting off going out shopping for clothing, that just slowing down, putting off like putting something in the cart but not buying it till you return a couple days later. Usually a couple days is enough. And sometimes you'll still decide to buy the thing. But a lot of times you might not, and you could save yourself thousands of dollars with that. I also think not using credit cards for high risk, high frequency expenses. So I do not like people using credit cards for grocery store for buying groceries. And I get a lot of flack for that. People are like, but I want the points. Well, good news, you can get points from groceries without putting things on a credit card. And the bad news is if you use a credit card to pay for things like groceries or anything really, the average person will spend 15% more using a credit card than they will using a debit card. And nobody's giving you 15% points. So, and you have to pay an annual fee. So most people are in the red by using a credit card to try and get all these points. And they're actually spending more to get the points than they're actually gaining. So credit cards for things like regular bills, great. You're not going to overspend on those because you don't want to. But groceries, day-to-day spending, the tiny amount in reality that you'll actually use in points from not using the credit card, by all means, rack up the other points as much as you can. I do. But not using the credit card is going to save a lot more than you're going to lose in points. So that's one as well. And I also think that when you do save money, let's say I use $100 of points this week to buy something. That's $100 I didn't have to take out of my spending money. So I could choose to do something different with that $100. I could go do something fun. I could put it in my savings. I could top up my vacation fund. So taking a minute when you've had a significant savings and giving that saved money a job instead of just leaving it into your account where you just spend it on something else. Sometimes that's a great way to benefit from the saving you did while you were shopping.
And, I don't know why I just thought of this, but you spend a lot of time talking to people over the years about goal setting, like what's the money for? And I think without goals and multiple goals, people do get more caught up in the instant gratification. But if you can set some short, medium, and long-term goals and work towards it, does that help keep people on track?
Oh, yes. Short-term goals, especially that are 6 to 18 months out and no more than that. because a 6-month goal can still be pretty substantial. You can, if you're putting $500 a month away after 6 months, you've got a decent amount of money away. You can feel that. You can go on a little trip or do something really effective with that. It's not nothingness. And so 6 months is good enough, and 18 months is even better, but much longer than that. And we just don't have the endurance to wait out the reward. Also, when we save for something that's 6 to 18 months out, every month we make a significant degree of progress. So we see that thing getting closer. It's also easier to rally our families around short-term goals. We can get the kids on board. We can get the spouse on board. Sometimes this can be something you can, even if you're single and you just want to get your girlfriends all focused on the same thing, setting a short-term goal of going on a trip together and then helping each other stick to the planned spending. Like, those are all things that we can do. Those are just so much more effective than saving for retirement. Saving for long-term things, super important. Just understanding that you're a human and logic is not your only operating system. And so taking advantage of your natural behaviors, we can actually use immediate gratification or near immediate gratification to our advantage by setting short-term goals. I think the other thing too, and I think we talked about this many times, Sybil, sometimes people beat themselves up for where they are financially, and that just doesn't get anyone anywhere. And sometimes you see it on TV shows that are featuring advice around spending or debt or budgeting, the finger wagging and the denied and the
makes them feel bad. And what about the people who say, I'm just bad with money?
Oh, yeah.
Because they believe they're bad with money.
That's a bad soundtrack to run in your head, right? So this is the thing, we need to stop talking to ourselves like that. Sometimes when I hear people saying things like, I'm busy, or I'm so bad with money, I'm like, who do you think hears you every time you say that? You,
yeah,
right? Your brain hears you and goes, okay, I guess that's what we are. So I want to encourage people not to beat themselves up about where they are with their cash flow. Just look for the next step forward that you can take, the next little change that you can make, and just keep piling little change on little change on little change. Before you know it, you will get somewhere significant. But the other thing is, we have to be real with ourselves about where we are. So we are in a different world than the world of our parents, who may sometimes be the ones with the finger wagging. Who, they saved for all their furniture. They bought their first house cash. Like, they did a lot of things that you just can't do. My mom, she loves when I tell people this. She was born in 1944, and she got to go home in the hospital with my grandfather's hand on her belly laying across the front seat. And if I did that with my son born in 2007, I'd get arrested. Yeah. Because in the 40s, people didn't have to spend $200 on a kid's car seat. And we didn't all have insurance for everything. So there are a lot of things we pay for today that is not just instant gratification or things that we're making a bad choice, but they're expenses that did not exist for the generations before us, who were sometimes telling us, back in my day, we paid cash for that. So you're in your own reality. You can't be anyone else. You can't go back in time and change anything. Focus on what you can control and what you can control going forward. Let the past go, and just be aware if somebody's giving you a lecture who never had to put their kid in a car seat, that
yep. Times have changed, Mom.
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of brings it full circle to mastering your cash flow. What's it all for? And I meant to ask you earlier, and I didn't, so I'm going to ask you now. But what does living a wealthy life mean to you?
I think to me it means time freedom, probably more than anything else. And it means that I can feel safe, and I can feel confident that we'll be okay financially. I don't need to be rich. I don't need any parades thrown in my honor. I don't need easy. But to me, a wealthy life is a life where, if we want to go to the UK and visit the in-laws anytime we want, that it's not a big mathematical struggle of how are we going to do that? That it's living, where you want, and doing work you care about, and watching your kids grow and become responsible humans. I think those things are all a wealthy life to me.
Oh, that's great. I would agree with those things. So let's summarize what people need to take away from this session today. If you could provide a quick recap of advice for our listeners.
Yeah, so quick recap, things I would suggest people consider is before you do anything else, let yourself off the hook and then decide what you can change. So don't drag the baggage of all the mistakes you made before with you while you try to make changes. It won't do you any good. Think about what you want from your cash flow. Do you want to travel? Do you just want to not worry? Do you want to be rich? That's an acceptable goal. What is it that you want for your cash flow? And if you know that, it will be much easier for you to change your behavior because you can align that to your spending changes. Don't buy day-to-day things on your credit cards, no matter how many points they give you. Keep your spending money separate as much as possible. Stick to a limit. Get your family on board. And just focus on making steps in the right direction. Do not expect perfection. This is not a straight line. It isn't just, an upwards journey where you just succeed all the way through. There will be setbacks. You will have financial emergencies. Things will change. And if you are developing these behaviors of being able to control your spending and set short-term goals and meet them, when the road splits or when something changes or things don't go as planned, you will be way more capable of making the next best decision.
And you'll have so much less stress. I just feel my shoulders relaxing as I hear that. Imagine being fully in control of your money, being intentional about your spending less than you earn on a consistent basis. It really takes a lot of the money stress away. And we've got a great worksheet that people can use to get started, because I think everybody says, well, I don't even know what I'm spending right now. That's step number one. And so go to thewealthylife.com and check out our cash flow worksheet. We don't call it a budget intentionally because the exercise is just about bringing awareness to where your money is coming from and where it is going today, so that people can feel more in control of their cash flow. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All the pleasure is all mine. I'm always happy to chat with you, Sybil, and I hope some people will take some of our ideas and run with them.
And thank you to our audience. We so appreciate your likes, your shares, your follows. Spread the word. We want everyone to be financially successful. And what would you like us to cover next? Be sure to reach out to us and let us know at thewealthylife.com. As always, please seek independent professional advice before taking action. We are here to provide information to help you learn and ask the right questions to make smart decisions so you can live the wealthy life.